What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you for Sunday of championship week in college basketball, the final day of the championship week. And it's Selection Sunday. What am I saying? Welcome to Selection Sunday, everybody. March 16th. I don't know if I'm going to have if I'm going to come back and do like a bracket reaction video or something tonight. I'm considering it, maybe. I'll probably do like a bracket video where I show you what my bracket is going to be potentially. But for that, I like to wait like a little bit to see like kind of where like the market starts coming out, like try to gauge like where the public is going to be. Because I should do that because I can explain like how to fill out like a bracket, which is really different than actually betting. So we'll talk about that. But today we have a short slate because college basketball is almost over. Yesterday I went 2-1 again. So it's 2 straight days of 2-1. That's not too bad. We got the win on Cornell, easy win on the college basketball game that I had. Then we had, what else did I even have? St. Louis Blues was an easy win as well. Statistically, they dominated that game too. They won 5-1, but they had a huge shot edge. I think it was against Minnesota, right? I think Minnesota only had like 19 shots on goal in the game. So just huge edge in the shot department. Despite having a lead all game, that tells you that's some domination there by St. Louis, even though their shot edge didn't help me in the previous game of theirs. And then they also had like 60% of faceoffs won. So just a lot of statistics heavily in favor of St. Louis in that game. Easy win. And then the Pistons fell short. That was my one loss where they were losing a large portion of that game. They were winning early and then they were losing later in the game. Then they came back and they cut it to 1 with like 3 minutes to go. And they were within that number and they were still within that number. They were down 2-4 in like the final couple of minutes of the game. And then of course, intentional foul and a couple of free throws by SGA right at the end. And it winds up landing on 6. And if he had missed one of those free throws, we would have pushed. Man, I'm kind of pissed because the line was like 6.5 really early. So I missed the best number. I thought it was a great spot though. So I didn't want to pass it up just because of the difference between 6 and 5, or 6.5 and 5 even. But what can you do? Sometimes it happens. It was still a winning day. And then I will congratulate all of the conference championship winners that we had. You're gonna see if I can remember all of these. Congratulations to Bryant for winning the American East. They will be in the tournament probably as a 16 seed, I would guess. Maybe they'll be up on the 15 line because they're actually not that bad. I forget where I have them in my bracketology. Congratulations to Akron who won the MAC. They were down double digits in that game, man. I think they made like an 18-point comeback in that game, had a ridiculous late run. This Akron team, certainly not a bad team. They'll probably be 14 or 13 line, I would guess, somewhere in that ballpark in the tournament. Who else won? Congratulations to Mount St. Mary's for winning the MAC as an underdog against Iona. Iona had the lead early and then just totally fell flat. I thought Iona would win that game. Not the case. Mount St. Mary's likely to be playing in Dayton in one of those play-in games for one of the 16 seeds because they're not the greatest teams. That's where I expect them. Matt, what's up, man? Yes, actually, I do that. That is my tradition that I take work off on the first 2 days of March Madness, Friday and Saturday. Or excuse me, Thursday and Friday. Saturday, I wouldn't have to because I don't work a weekend job. Yeah, Thursday and Friday, I take those 2 days off. I used to like go out to bars and like sometimes hang out with friends and stuff and watch all the games and drink, but now I'm sober. So I have to figure out other ways to do it. I could still go to like bars and stuff and watch. And there's actually a place not that far from where I live here where some of the professional bettors that I follow actually hosted like a party there for the Final Four last year. So I went to that. That's a pretty good spot, which is not far away from where I live, only like a 15-minute drive, and they have a huge setup with tons and tons of TVs. So I could go there again. Oh, yeah. This is it's my favorite thing, man. And then it's over so quickly. Selection Sunday, and then it rolls right into the stupid first 4 games, which I really don't like because I like having that time to like try to get your bracket ready, although you still have until Thursday. But then you got to figure out like who the opponent is going to be. which I'm going to talk about those playing games too, because those play-ins into like 11 seeds can really affect the tournament. And then what else was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, that's about it. Who else won their conference tournaments yesterday? We had, well, congratulations to Houston winning the Big 12 without Juwan Roberts there. And hopefully he's going to be healthy by the time the tournament starts. Don't know, though. They're going to be a 1 seed, so they're not going to need him to beat a 16 seed. So they might even rest him in that game. Although if it was me and he was healthy, I would like get him some minutes in that game because of the reverse injured player theory, man. You don't want to have the reverse injured player theory rear its head on you in a game that's actually more difficult, which really the second round matchup starts becoming like a game that's a bit more competitive. So if they can, I would probably try to get him involved in the 116 game just to get that game kind of, out of the way, get him used to playing again. Maybe give him like 20 minutes or so in the game, 15 minutes. I don't know about that, but we'll see. And then we had the Big West late at night. Congratulations to UC San Diego, definitely deserving of getting into the tournament. There was a question about whether or not they were going to be considered for an at-large bid. I don't think they would have made it. UC Irvine is definitely not going to make it. UC San Diego had a case because their metrics are so good, but their schedule is just not strong enough. But they are definitely a dangerous team. I just worry that they're going to be a little bit too hyped. I'm assuming Grand Canyon won last night, right? So congratulations to Grand Canyon for winning the WAC. That was the really, really late night game. I think they won. They were losing early, and then they took the lead. Yeah, they won. And then congratulations to there was one of the other big conferences finished, right? Am I like losing my mind? I don't even remember. Oh, the congratulations to Colorado State in the Mountain West beating Boise State. That is a bid steal. That's the only official bid steal that we're going to get this year. Colorado State, they put themselves on the bubble, but I don't think they were going to get in unless they won that game. Now they're in, and now Boise is going to have to sweat. And I said yesterday I thought Boise would get in, but I could easily see them being the first team left out of the tournament, which would really, really suck. And they've made the tournament, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row. So we'll see what happens with that. But Colorado State will be in. And then what were the other conferences? There were a couple other ones, right? Do I have to look at the schedule here? I can, I guess. I just want to kind of run through them in my mind. I do this for like my own thinking as well, just to remember everything. Oh, congratulations to Norfolk State. They're going to be in. They'll be a 16 seed probably. I have them in one of the 16s that's not a play-in because they're actually decent, and they do have that name behind them where they keep making the tournament. But they keep winning it's the MEAC. The MEAC sucks. So Norfolk State will be in. The way that game ended was bizarre. That was one of the most bizarre endings to a game that maybe I've ever seen. This is MEAC basketball, man. It's not very good basketball. Even though Norfolk State does look good at times, but Norfolk State had a 5-point lead in that game. With like 14 seconds to go. So South Carolina State has to intentionally foul. Or did they? Because Norfolk State turned it over. They threw away an inbound pass. SC State scored to cut it to 3, I think. Or maybe they got fouled and cut it to 4. Whatever it was, I forget. But then it happened again after that. I think maybe that happened. Then there was an intentional foul. And Norfolk State, I think, maybe missed one. I don't know what it was. But somehow Norfolk State wound up inbounding it again at a point where they're only up 2 now. And they turned over the inbound pass again. And SC State tied the game. I was flipping between a bunch of games because a bunch of the games were ending. The Big Ten game, the Wisconsin game was ending around the same time. And I think the George Mason game also was. So there were or maybe it was VCU. I don't remember. There were a lot of teams that were in the SEC game. The Tennessee Auburn game was ending around the same time. So I'm trying to watch all the endings to these games. I'm like, what just happened? Because Norfolk State, I was like, oh, this is going to intentional fouls. This isn't interesting anymore. I saw them turn over that inbound pass. And then I think it was probably a 3-point game. Somehow it became a 2-point game. They turned over the other inbound pass. Never seen anything like that. Becomes a tied game. And then, they didn't turn over the inbound pass. Excuse me. On the first turnover, they actually had the ball in South Carolina State's And so they were like setting up their offense and they threw it away. And South Carolina scored in transition, which makes no sense because at that point, South Carolina State should be intentionally fouling. Then the other turnover was on an inbound pass. South Carolina State tied the game. Then South Carolina State, one of their players didn't realize that it was a tied game. It was like what Minnesota did to me in the middle of the season in the game against Ohio State, I think, where Minnesota intentionally fouled, thinking that they were losing when it was actually a tied game. And luckily for me, thankfully for me, they still covered that number against Ohio State. Although I think they lost, but they covered. But this is ridiculous, man. And in a conference championship game, South Carolina State had just dramatically tied the game on that stupid turnover, and then they intentionally foul, not realizing that they're not losing the game anymore. It's actually a tied game, and Norfolk State hit one of two, but that was enough with 3 seconds left, and then South Carolina State couldn't score. It was just a really, really bizarre ending. Just not great basketball, but congratulations to Norfolk State nonetheless. And then we did have, I'm looking right now at the rest of these games here. What else was there? Oh, I totally forgot the Conference USA finished. Congratulations to Liberty. Liberty was able to get that one done, so they will be in probably somewhere around like a 12 seed. Liberty, not a bad team. 12, maybe 13. And then congratulations to Alabama State for winning the SWAC. So they will probably be in one of those 16 seed play-in games. I don't know how they won. I thought Jackson State was the better team. I mean, they were favored, but Alabama State won that. And I think they won that tournament, upsetting 1 seed Southern. I think Alabama State was like the 5 seed in that tournament or something like that, but they will be playing in Dayton in one of the playing. I think regardless of whichever team won that conference, they would be in one of the play-in games. But it will be Alabama State, which, by the way, the last time I remember Alabama State being in the tournament was in a play-in game. This is some Toad bracket autism history here. This was back in 2007, I want to say, the year of the Florida repeat year, the second year that Florida team won the title, where I won my bracket pools that year, even though it seemed stupid probably to take Florida to win again, but they did with Noah and Horford and Corey Brewer and whoever else they had on that team. Anyway, yeah, that tournament, back when it was there was only one play-in game back then. It was for the last 16 seed, the good old days. Alabama State was one of the teams in that game, and I think they lost that play-in game to, I want to say it was like Florida A&M. I don't remember, man. I could have all of this wrong. No, because Florida A&M's in the same conference that they are. Maybe it was Niagara, something. I don't even remember. Well, yeah, my bracket autism is failing me, but Alabama State, I'm pretty sure it was Alabama State. They had a player named Chief Kicking Stallion Sims. That's what I remember. He was a Native American center who was like probably, I mean, these guys are not that big in that conference. Probably like 6'9", 6'10", but he's this huge, like, Native American dude, and his name is Chief Kicking Stallion Sims, and he was like the best player on that Alabama State team back then. That's just what I remember. Not good enough to even win the 16 seed play-in game, though. I think they lost that game, but I just loved that name, and I called my bracket Chief Kicking Stallion Sims that year. Anyway, let's talk about today's games, man. So, looking at yesterday, still all those teams got in that I mentioned. We still have 6 conference championships to determine here. Cornell and Yale is the first one up, which is in the same venue as yesterday at Brown's home arena in Providence, Rhode Island. Yale had an escape yesterday against Princeton as a 7.5 point favorite. Very low scoring game, and that was a crazy ending to that game where they hit back and forth threes, basically, or they did. Not basically, they did. Princeton hit a 3 to take a 2-point lead, and then Yale hit a 3 to retake Princeton hit a 3 to take a 1-point lead. Then Yale hit a 3 to take a 2-point lead back with like a few seconds to go, and that wound up being the game winner in a very low-scoring game. I still like Yale in this one. Yale down from 5.5 to 5.5 with reduced juice, but 85% of the cash coming in on Yale, 58% of tickets coming in on Cornell. Based on what we saw yesterday, Cornell, of course, I was on Cornell yesterday. I thought it was a big like kind of regression / progression spot, because Cornell had lost to Dartmouth by like 40 points the last time they had played them and had the worst shooting performance of the season. So I expected a big like return to form from Cornell in that game, and I nailed that one. They had an easy win and cover yesterday against a Dartmouth team that usually is not in this thing at all. Cornell is certainly the better team there. But now I lean to Yale here. I mean, Cornell made themselves look really good yesterday. So if people just look at what happened in those first two games, Yale barely escaped against Princeton and Cornell destroyed Dartmouth. So it looks like you want to take Cornell getting points here, right? I don't agree with that. I mean, Cornell, yeah, they can score, but their defense is really, really bad. Yale is the better of these two teams. I don't know if KenPom up right now, but Yale, certainly the more balanced team. They are the team that deserves to win this conference. I think they only have one conference loss the entire season, so it would definitely be a shame if they don't get into the tournament again. And I do think they have some returning players from last year's Yale team that upset Auburn in the tournament in that crazy 13-4 upset, which hurt my bracket because Auburn I thought was going to be a threat to UConn. And I was going to be able to see Auburn versus UConn in person if Auburn got to that Sweet 16 round. And that my hopes were dashed, man. And I wound up not being able to see that. What would have been probably a great game between Auburn and UConn going to those games in person in Boston last year. Anyway, I think Yale is the right side there. Hopefully I'm right about that. Doesn't make my card, though. I don't know if I'm playing any of these college basketball games. VCU against George Mason. VCU up from 7.5 to 8 in the A10 championship game here, which is in Washington, D.C. So actually pretty close by to both of these colleges. They're both kind of in the D.C. area, more or less. George Mason, 58% of the tickets on them, but 87% of the cash coming in on VCU. It would also be a shame if VCU doesn't get into the tournament. VCU is definitely the best team in the A10. And you can see here, I mean, an 8-point favorite over George Mason, who was the 2 seed in this conference. George Mason, I don't think is actually the second best team in the conference. They did kind of escape yesterday with that win against St. Joe's. Well, not really escape. They kind of won that game somewhat easily. It got a little bit closer at the end, but I was wrong about that game. I liked St. Joe's in that one. I keep saying George Mason, I think, is overrated from all the way back. You know, a lot of the bracketology said George Mason winning this conference throughout the year because they had the best conference record for a while. But I was like, nope, VCU is the better team. And now it comes down to this. And I'm already, I'm proven right because the odds makers are telling you that. But hopefully they do get the job done because this is a very dangerous VCU team that definitely could compete. They're like in the 30s in KenPom's rankings, similar to where UC San Diego is, even though they play kind of a different style of basketball. But you want to see VCU get into this tournament, man, with Max Shulga, their white man. We need some white boy summer action here, man. Early white boy summer. VCU, yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say about that other than you usually want to look to the better teams to kind of win out in these championship games when they really matter. And VCU has to win this game to get into the tournament. I don't think they're going to get in at large, even though they are kind of on the discussion. Their schedule's just not strong enough. So they got to make sure that they get this win, and hopefully they do. I'll be rooting for them. The SEC championship, NDS, what's up, man? Is that Top Lobster or is that David? Are we doing a timeline cleanse watching me live? SEC championship, Tennessee and Florida. Man, Florida up from a 3.5-point favorite to a 5-point favorite with juice. The money is coming in on Florida, and a pretty significant line move, really. 73% of tickets, 86% of the cash coming in on Florida. Public seems to kind of want Florida as well, but the money coming in on Florida as well. And if anything, I think Florida might actually be being overlooked in this game a little bit. I think people are going to give Tennessee more credit for their win yesterday against Auburn. That was a nice win for Tennessee yesterday. Auburn, of course, I mentioned this when I talked about my handicap for that game yesterday. I leaned Tennessee yesterday and the under in that game. I don't remember if the under actually hit or not. I think it did. It was a low-scoring game. But Auburn didn't need that game. Like, Auburn was going to be a 1 seed, probably the overall 1 seed, regardless of whether or not. Oh, I forgot. congratulations to Duke for winning the ACC. I totally forgot about them because I hate them that much, but they won the ACC. Good job, Duke. Winning without Cooper Flagg, though. So there you go, I guess, beating Louisville. And I apologize, I was wrong. Duke actually did play Louisville like way earlier in the season. I didn't see it on the schedule there, but they did beat Louisville earlier in the season as well, more easily than they did last night. Florida, back to this thing. Tennessee, yeah, so they beat Auburn. The thing about the SEC, the way this sets up, is that Auburn was the one of these like remaining four teams here who didn't really need to win the SEC as much as the other teams did. None of them need to, but the other three all had the potential to get a 1 seed, get that final 1 seed, whereas Auburn is already going to be a 1 seed and probably still the overall 1 seed just because their record against like the top teams is so good. There's like a gap there. It's almost unmatched. I mean, it's possible they wind up giving the overall 1 seed to Duke, but I still think it's going to be Auburn, even though they lost to Tennessee. I mean, a loss to Tennessee is not really going to dock them very much. Tennessee, also good, also has a chance at a 1 seed. Now what we have here is the winner of this game is going to get the other 1 seed. I have it being Florida. I think that it will be Florida, and it's pretty simple. Tennessee is just too imbalanced, man. They have a really, really good defense, but their offense is not as good at times. Florida is a much more balanced team who's nearly as good defensively and also good offensively. It is going to be a pacing contrast where Florida tries to run and go up tempo. Tennessee tries to slow it down. So Tennessee may be able to get this game a little bit slower. I mean, the total's really low, which, by the way, in these championship games, you do want to look towards unders because you get like defensive focus in these games. The issue that I have with these championship games that these teams have played like 4 or 5 nights in a row. So it's kind of tough to really like be that intense on defense when you're getting like really tired, having played that many games in a row. So I worry about the unders in these championship games a little bit, although that is the way that you typically want to look because there is still defensive focus. Game tends to be played a little bit slower because offenses don't want to make mistakes, but also the offenses can be affected by playing that many games in a row. The 3-point shooting can be affected, which in this game would affect Florida more than Tennessee. Tennessee, not as much of a 3-point shooting team. And it can kind of affect just like the pace. Like you don't really typically want to like go up tempo as much when you play 3-4 nights in a row. So that's the way that it goes. But at any rate, yeah, so I would still lean to the under, but the total's up from 139.5 to 144. Juice to the under, 72% of the tickets, 90% of the cash on the under, or excuse me, on the over. So no surprise the public is going to want to try to play this thing over, even though Tennessee plays low scoring games. I would agree with the under, but it's just not something that I want to try to risk it on. I like the Florida side in this one again because I think Florida just is the better team on offense and basically almost as good defensively. These two teams had some of the most interesting matchups during the regular season. Not in that the games were good. They weren't, but the games were so lopsided in each direction. It was crazy. Florida lost at Tennessee. Tennessee beat them by like 30 points at Tennessee earlier in the season. Then I was on Florida in the revenge spot later in the season with Florida at home, and Florida won that game by like 30 points. So each home team in the season series won the home game in an absolute blowout. And the road team had a horrific offensive performance in each of those games. Florida didn't even get out of the 40s in the game at Tennessee. And I think Tennessee may have not gotten out of the 40s at Florida either. So on their home floor, these teams stepped it up defensively, and the road teams really, really struggled, which does show you that these teams could definitely be stymied offensively, though, at times. If any defense is going to be able to try to slow down Florida, it would be Tennessee because their defense is that good. So all that being said, though, I think just the better team does win out there with Florida. You don't trust Bruce Pearl. What was the airplane incident? I don't even know. Bruce Pearl, I mean, he's untrustworthy when it comes to the tournament. It seems like his teams kind of lapse in focus against like teams that they think they should beat easily. They do tend to lose to like some inferior team in the tournament every time, but they've made at least one like really deep run. I think it was 2019, right? That run, they made it to the Final Four with Bruce Pearl, I think that year, right? The Virginia championship year. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think they did. And that was the longest run. So at least he's not Rick Barnes. Speaking of SEC coaches with bad tournament resumes, Rick Barnes, Tennessee's coach, he's had his teams in the tournament, I think 20 times now, and he has 0 Final Four appearances with Texas and Tennessee. And he's had some good teams and just can't get them there. So I don't trust Rick Barnes. The American Athletic Championship game is UAB and Memphis. Memphis barely escaped again yesterday, man. I keep telling you this Memphis team is not good. Really, they're not. They turn the ball over way too much. They're absolutely massively overrated as the 16th ranked team in the country. They'll be in the tournament. I mean, I guess they're deserving of being in the tournament, but I'm probably going to bounce them in the first round in my bracket, which tends to be my tradition at this point. Oh, it's Penny Hardaway, Memphis. Kick them out of the tournament in the first game, man. I know I did it against FAU. I had a bet on FAU that year in that first round matchup, which, yeah, it was close. It went down to the wire, but that's just how it is. Memphis, don't think they're that good. They're extremely turnover prone. Penny Hardaway, not a good coach. Very undisciplined play from Memphis. But the fact that they're coming off an escape again, 2 really close games in a row, yesterday against Tulane, makes me think that Memphis is going to show up more focused this time, but they are down from 5.5 to 3.5 here. So significant line move. Some money coming in on UAB. 60% of tickets on Memphis, 53% of the cash coming in on UAB. I would have to agree with the line move in this one, though, just because it looks like such a strong market indicator here. And UAB, definitely not a pushover. UAB looked more impressive in their win yesterday, though, even though it was an ugly, low-scoring game. They easily beat North Texas in Fort Worth, nonetheless. Oh, and by the way, Nashville, I should have mentioned Tennessee's crowd will show up for that SEC game in Nashville, but Florida, I mean, their crowd is also going to be well represented there, so I don't think that's a huge deal. Yeah, North Texas, kind of surprising they got bounced in this tournament, but they have really bad offensive play at times, and that's just, I think, what did them in. UAB kind of plays a similar style. UAB slows the game down, and that's the thing. Memphis, I'm pretty sure, wants to go up-tempo, and UAB is going to try to ugly this up and slow it down. So that is decent when you have an underdog in a championship game like this. A lot of times the slower pace can win out a little bit. So I could see the reasons for playing UAB there for sure. They had a flight November to Houston. It was rerouted back to Auburn an hour into the flight. Auburn was fighting on the plane. I don't remember that at all, man. That's pretty ridiculous, though. So they beat Houston, though. So I don't know. Was that for the game against Houston? They actually won that game. Houston, by the way, they only have one regulation loss this entire season, and I'm pretty sure it was that game. They lost to Auburn in regulation by 2 points, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so Auburn being in total disarray. How did Houston lose that game then? I don't know. Because you'd think that Houston would have been able to win that game against an Auburn team that's having all those issues. And then we saw Auburn with Baker, Mazzara, or whatever get thrown out of that game where I had bet Auburn against Alabama not that long ago. So that sucked as well. Yeah, Auburn, they got some head cases there. And we have the Big Ten championship here with Wisconsin up from 3.5 to 3.5 with juice. 64% of tickets, 71% of the cash coming in on them. This is in Indianapolis. Both teams are going to be well represented in the crowd for this one as well. Wisconsin and Michigan. Wisconsin beat Michigan State yesterday. That game pretty much went right to the wire. Really nice win for Wisconsin. They did play the earlier game, so they may have a little bit of a rest edge. Tennessee played the earlier game against in the SEC, by the way. I believe Memphis played the earlier game in the conference, in the American conference there. And I forget which one of George Mason and VCU played the earlier game. And Yale played the earlier game, by the way, between Yale and Cornell yesterday. Anyway, yeah, so Wisconsin maybe had a bit of a rest edge here. Michigan, their game went right to the wire as well. Tough game against Maryland. Maryland definitely a tough out. Michigan was able to beat Maryland yesterday. But it looks like the money is coming in on Wisconsin, driving the lineup, 64% of tickets, 72% of the cash coming in on Wisconsin. I don't disagree with that move. I would probably lean to Wisconsin. I mean, I just think they have more of the pedigree at this point in doing stuff in this tournament. Like Michigan, of course, as I've been saying, I mean, they've a coach who's new to the Big Ten tournament here, Dusty May, although it hasn't really hurt them yet in this tournament. The one maybe issue for Wisconsin, though, is that they played an extra game. They did not get the extra bye like Michigan did, so Wisconsin's playing a fourth straight day, whereas Michigan is only playing a third straight day. Still, at that point, 3 versus 4, I mean, probably not that much of a difference between how rested these teams are going to be. And Wisconsin, like I said, did play the earlier game yesterday. Total up from 149.5 to 150.5. I would agree with the under in this one as well, though. 77% of tickets, 83% of the cash coming into the over. But this is a similar matchup to Wisconsin-Michigan State, even though I know that game did go over. At least I didn't bet the under there. But Wisconsin, as I said yesterday, they take a lot of threes. Michigan defends the three pretty well. Not as well as Michigan State, but they do defend the three well. Michigan mostly does their scoring in the interior, 2-point offense, and that's where Wisconsin's defense is at its best. So the defenses do match up decently in that game for both teams. Yeah, I don't know, man. So not going to have a play in any of these games, but that's the breakdown there. Let's move over to hockey. We actually have a big hockey slate for it being a Sunday card here. Vegas is at Detroit. The line has dropped big time on Vegas. Some strong indicators on Detroit here. Vegas down from minus 157 to minus 135. 61% of tickets on them. 68% of the cash coming in on Detroit. I do see the arguments for it. One being that Vegas is on a back-to-back, and they went into overtime yesterday. So Vegas is at a rest disadvantage here. They're only traveling from Buffalo to Detroit, but they're playing a lot of road games in a row, man. They're on a back-to-back, 3 games in 4 days, 4 games in 6 days, all in different cities, and actually 5 games in 8 days, all in different cities. That's pretty difficult, including a couple of overtime games in there. Still, losing to Buffalo is a pretty embarrassing loss, but they did have Aiden Hill in net there, so they're probably going to go with Samsonov this time, and he is their lesser of their 2 goalies, so that's not good for Vegas either. That may have something to do with the line move that Samsonov is going to be in net here. And even though they're coming off the embarrassing loss, and you might think it should be a bounce back spot, the rest situation, the goalie situation, none of that is very good for Vegas. And Detroit coming off a tough game as well, where they lost to Carolina, but they at least had a day off in there. They're coming back home, but only from 1 game. So it's not like they're returning over from a road trip. They were just home before that. So being distracted by having to return back home and do stuff at home isn't really going to be something that comes into play here. Detroit, they're playing harder because they're trying to get into the playoffs, man. Vegas is more secure in their playoff spot. So Detroit does have a motivational edge here. So I do agree with Detroit, but it's not going to make my card. We have some big hockey games, man. Some good matchups here. Dallas and Colorado. That's a good game. Colorado up from minus 125 to minus 137 is the home favorite here. 55% of tickets, 69% of the cash. So the market read is on Colorado. I don't know if I see that much of an angle in this one. Dallas just lost to Winnipeg. I mean, that's a big game. They're continuing a road trip. They lost pretty badly, 4-1, though. I mentioned I liked Winnipeg in that one. Winnipeg very, very good at home as well. Dallas coming off that, now having to go into elevation, but they did have a lot of rest prior to that Winnipeg game. So even though they're in the middle of a road trip here, I don't think the rest is really going to affect them that much there, but they are still coming off of Winnipeg and going into elevation. So maybe a slight disadvantage for that reason. Colorado's returning home from a road trip, though, although it was only a short road trip to Minnesota and Calgary with a bit of rest in there. So it's not like the full road trip where you are gone for so long that you have a lot of stuff to do when you get back home. You're not going to overlook the Dallas Stars either, man. I mean, they're one of the best teams in hockey. So I think that return home distraction probably isn't in play here. So you might just default to the market read and lean Colorado, but I don't really see a big edge here situationally one way or the other. So obviously not playing that game. Edmonton at the Rangers. Edmonton up from minus 135 to minus 154. Money is coming in on Edmonton, 73% of tickets and cash on them. So they are public, but it looks like the money is coming in on them. Edmonton may be at a little bit of an advantage here geographically because they're just staying in the New York area, even though they are playing 3 games in 4 days and 4 games in 6 days, but they're all basically in the state of New York or in the New York, New Jersey area. They're coming off an overtime win over the Islanders, and Picard was in net there, so you're going to get Skinner back in net this time, even though not that I think that Edmonton's goalies are any good, really. But Skinner is their better goalie, so he will be back in net for this one. So Edmonton not really at a huge disadvantage here, as much as other teams might be with having to face a bunch of road games in a row here. Just staying in the New York City area probably is a bit beneficial to them. And the fact that they got that win over the Islanders, who aren't really that good, to kind of just break that losing momentum should be a positive for them. Rangers are returning home from a road trip. They've been on the road not for a full week, though, but they did go out to Winnipeg. So they were kind of out in the prairie area there. And then they beat Minnesota. They played tough against Winnipeg, beat Minnesota, and then beat Columbus. And Columbus is one of the teams in the playoff race that the Rangers are fighting against to try to get a wild card. So that was a big win. Now they're coming home facing a non-conference opponent with no days off, by the way. So the Rangers are on a back-to-back, playing a 3rd game in 4 days, 4th game in 6 days, all in different cities, and actually a 5th game in 8 days, and actually a 6th game in 9 days. Is that right? That's like kind of a crazy schedule, man. Yeah, that's what it looks like, I guess. 6 games in 9 days. So the Rangers definitely at a rest disadvantage here. So I agree with the market in this one. I agree with Edmonton in that one. Doesn't make my card, but yeah, I agree with it. So I'm agreeing with the market on all of these. And then I am agreeing with the market in the game that I actually have. I'm not going to talk about every one of these games, but I will talk about most of them. Anaheim and St. Louis, this is where I'm actually going, man. And it's Anaheim on the money line, plus 150. Or maybe if you want to consider doing a split bet and like taking less risk, I'd probably be fine with that. If you want to take Anaheim plus 1.5 on the puck line, you have to lay like minus 170 on that, but do that for half of the bet and then split on the other half, do the money line to win the other half of the bet, basically. So then if Anaheim wins outright, obviously you still cash the whole bet. If they come within 1 goal, then it's still a slight win because you only lose the money line part of it, which you're putting less money on. So could consider doing it that way. It's a little bit less of a risk. I mean, the reward almost winds up being the same. So now that I think about it, it's kind of stupid to not do that. I just like how ballsy it is to be like, no, fuck you. I'm taking the money line here. St. Louis, of course, I was on them in each of their last 2 games. They statistically won that game against Pittsburgh and still didn't win the game. So that pissed me off. But then they were able to win yesterday. But now I think we're looking at a really bad spot here, man. This St. Louis team, they haven't been back at home for 2 weeks. They haven't been home since Sunday the 2nd. That is insane, this road trip that they've been on. It does mean that they had a lot of days off in the middle of this road trip because it was only a 6-game road trip, but they've been away from home for so long that, again, like I say, even though St. Louis is trying to fight for a wild card spot, when you return home, man, you get distracted. You have stuff to do at home, family life to get back to, and I don't think they're really going to pay that much attention to this Anaheim team. It's a really bad team, and they already beat Anaheim on the road during that road trip. So it's a little bit of a quick revenge spot for Anaheim as well. And it's one of the longest road trips that I've seen on the NHL schedule, man. That's crazy how long that road trip was, like duration-wise. And it took St. Louis out to the Pacific Coast, and then all the way out to Pittsburgh for some reason, and then to Minnesota. And they finished the road trip with a big win, like I said, yesterday against Minnesota. So they're also on a back-to-back and having to return home. It's a 3rd game in 4 days. They did have a lot of rest in between the LA and Pittsburgh, though. So that did help kind of split the road trip up. But it's not like, did they stop back at home? Maybe they did. I don't know if they even did, man, because you got to go from LA to Pittsburgh. Maybe a pit stop at home, but not really a whole lot of time to do that. So I don't know that they really did. Either way, they probably still have stuff to do once they get back at home. And it also is one of these weird situations where they have to go home and then they have to go out on the road again for the next game, although it's a short trip over to Nashville. But still, they do have to go back out on the road again after that. And Nashville is at least a better team than Anaheim is. It might draw your focus a little bit more. So I do not like the spot for St. Louis at all in this game. I do not like blue eggs and ham. Anaheim here, I mean, I don't know if they're a team I really want to play on, but they beat Nashville yesterday. And now they're starting a road trip, and I like that spot. When you start a road trip, you tend to be focused on that first game on the road trip, man. You want to get off on the right foot. And it is a St. Louis team that came into Anaheim's place and beat them back on the 7th. So it's a quick turnaround road revenge angle here for Anaheim. So maybe a little bit of extra focus and motivation for Anaheim there. So I usually like to jump on spots where you see a team returning home from a road trip. They're going to be in an unfocused spot most likely, and then you have the other team being in a focused spot starting a road trip. I like that like collision of situations there. So that is the hockey play for me, is the Anaheim side. Whether you want to go all money line or split puck line, money line, either way you want to do it, that's the play. Anaheim Ducks, the formerly mighty Ducks. They're not very mighty now. And let's move over to the NBA. Why don't we? To finish off this video here, NBA. I don't even which of these games do I even want to talk about, man? So many of these teams are just like packing it in and whatever, and we just have some ugly games, some double-digit spreads. Cleveland and Orlando still could be a decent game if Orlando kind of plays to their talent level. Cleveland, I mean, they're on another roll, obviously. They just beat Memphis, which was a pretty nice win. Possible they overlook Orlando a little bit, because the last time they played Orlando on February 25th, they went into Orlando and absolutely embarrassed them by 40 points. So I think Orlando is going to remember that, and Cleveland might take them a little bit lightly for that reason. They have the Clippers up next, which at least that's a team with a winning record, unlike Orlando. So possible that Cleveland kind of takes their foot off the gas in this game and doesn't cover this huge number. Don't expect them to lose the game, obviously. But Orlando's also coming off a loss. They are finishing a road trip, though, which is a little bit of a difficult spot. A third game in 4 days, all in different cities, is not really the easiest thing to do. They played pretty tough against Minnesota, so I don't really want to take Orlando coming off another tough game like that, although they certainly should have some focus against the Cavs here. Cavs sitting at an 11-point favorite, not much movement here. 66% of tickets, 95% of the cash on the Cavs, though. So the cash is coming in on the Cavs. Again, I'll just stay away from that game. I just figured I'd point it out just because it's one of the more interesting games. One of my 2 NBA plays is one that the public is not going to like this one. They're not going to want to be on this at all. Nobody's going to like this one. The Phoenix Suns +3. I'm going to fade the LA Lakers here. Lakers down from 4-3 here. I don't know if there are any 3.5 still out there. I think there were 3.5s out there for a while. Maybe you can still find a stray 3.5 out there. I mean, this line just looks so easy to just lay the points of the Lakers, especially where it looks like Luka is going to come back in this game after he missed a game where they rested him on a back-to-back. I think he's still dealing with some like injury situation there. So Luka is coming back in this game, and the Lakers are only laying 3 points here. 61% of the tickets on them, 53% of the cash coming in on the Suns. So the market read looks like it's on the Suns. Money coming in on the Suns. Public only wants the Lakers here. They're not going to want anything to do with the Suns team that has really, really not looked good as of late. But again, there are reasons why I like the Suns here, which I'll explain right now. One of them is that Luka might come back in this game. So that's a little bit of a reverse injured player theory spot, because the Lakers just played a game without him. And a lot of times when you have that star player out, you step up your game for that first game without him. And they did. Not only did they step up their game, but who was that game against? Oh, yeah, it was against the Denver Nuggets, who are the team that has had the Lakers number. And the Lakers are a 15.5-point underdog in this game with no LeBron and no Luka and no Hachimura in this game. But that shows you the Lakers do seem to lack some depth here, man. But they played really well in this game, and they played really close against Denver. This was a close game pretty much all the way. Lakers came back into the game. They had the lead in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes to go. Nuggets were able to turn it back on and win the game. Big game for the Lakers. And now the Lakers are coming off that. And that was their step-up game without Luka. And now Luka's coming back. So a lot of times after you play a big game like that, you kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit, even though they lost this game. Well, let's make the situation even worse for the Lakers. Whereas I'm saying Luka coming back is a disadvantage. Yes, that is what I'm saying. Again, because with him coming back into the lineup, you have to work him back into the lineup. He hasn't even been on the team for that long. So having him in and out of the lineup is like you have to readjust every time to it. And Luka, even though he's going to help their offense, I mean, their offense didn't really do that bad without him in that Denver game. And I think that he affects their defense in a negative way, though, when he's there on the floor. So that's one issue there. But the Lakers are also returning home from a road trip, and they're playing a third game in 4 days. So that's not a good spot. They've been away for over a week, and they lost every game on the road trip. Lakers kind of crashing down to earth a little bit, I think, man. And they were an underdog against Boston. They lost to Boston. Again, the odds makers kind of telling you what they think about that. Luka did play in that game. LeBron played in that game too. And the Lakers, LeBron, I think, got hurt in that game. And yeah, the Celtics still won that game. So again, maybe kind of a crash down to earth spot for the Lakers. Then I took Brooklyn in the next game, which was a bad spot for the Lakers, but still they lost outright to Brooklyn as a road favorite with Luka still in the lineup. Still kind of a bad spot coming off that Boston game with Milwaukee up next. So I did fade them there, but then they went to Milwaukee and they did not turn it back on. Luka scored 45. He was the guy that like stacked the entire stat sheet here, and they still lost that game by 20 points. So it's like, well, what are you talking about, man? Luka's good. He scored 45. Yeah, okay, but they lost the game by 20 points. So what good was that? And then they lost to Denver, of course, which was a big game. And that was on a back-to-back. And they played really well in that game. Now they're returning home. I don't know how much focus they're going to have on Phoenix, man, because Phoenix, even though they've been a little bit better since kind of all that like trade stuff died down, we're now, okay, we know we have Durant. We know we still have Beal. We got to get used to this, man, because this is going to be it. We got to try to get into the playoffs now. So that's kind of Phoenix's mindset, whereas the Lakers obviously are going to make the playoffs. I mean, their record is really good. It's just kind of a matter of seeding with them. So I think Phoenix kind of needs this game more too, as far as like getting into the playoffs. I don't know where they are in the standings exactly, but I think the need is more so on their side. The Lakers are turning home from a road trip. As I was just about to say, again, that's a distracted spot more often than not because you have to get back to home life again. And I know the Lakers are playing well when they were at home, but I think the knee-jerk reaction for the public is going to be, oh, the Lakers just had this, horrible road trip, but now Luka's going to be back again, and they're back at home. They're obviously going to bounce back, right? This game, the big ABC game, by the way, of the afternoon here at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, and I don't think it works like that. When you return home from a road trip, like I said, even if it was a bad road trip, I think the bounce back doesn't tend to happen, and I think the distraction does still tend to happen. I think Phoenix is going to be the more focused team here. I mean, they're below 500, man, and they're playing the LA fucking Lakers that they're going to step up for this game. They got to do something. Phoenix actually just returned home from a road trip, and they won the game against Sacramento by double digits, so they did not fall into the distracted angle. And not only that, but that broke a loss streak for them, but they've actually been playing well. Look at this run that they've had after they got blown out by Minnesota, which, yeah, that's bad. But then they beat the Clippers. They took Denver into overtime on the road, won at Dallas, which I know Dallas is basically a shell at this point, but still, you go into Dallas and beat them, that's not bad. They played to within 2 of Memphis and to within 7 of Houston, and then return home from all that and beat Sacramento anyway. So this Phoenix team, those are not bad results, man. Now they're going out on the road for this one game against LA. It's kind of a short trip, actually, so they have less travel now, even though they were out on the road for a little while before that. But they've had a little bit of time to kind of get their bearings again, and just having this one trip back out to LA, not like a huge deal to go from Phoenix to LA there. Whereas LA, like I said, is returning home from that long road trip that took, not long road trip, but road trip that took them to the East Coast and then into elevation. And now they're coming back home from Denver. So the spot, I think, sets up way better for Phoenix. They're going to be more rested, I think, with a little bit of less travel here. And I think they might be the more motivated of these two teams. So all that being said, give me the Phoenix Suns. And why is this line as short as it is? Again, I mean, obviously LeBron is out, but I think that even though Luka is playing, I mean, I think that the odds makers are just telling you, man, that the Lakers, they're just not exactly as good as you think. And with LeBron not in there, they become a pretty thin team, man. And they also lose some of their defense there with LeBron out. So Phoenix +3 or 3.5, even though it looks terrible. Nobody's going to like that at all. But that's what I'm doing. And then I'm going real ugly with my other game. The next game up, I'm going to lay the points with Atlanta as a road favorite against Portland. This is the spot here. Atlanta The line's moving up, though, man. So you might have to get this before it gets to 7. Hawks up from 6 to 6 with juice. 60% of the tickets, 68% of the cash. A lot of sixes. That's not good. 666. I would want to get to this before it hits 7, man, because as I always say in basketball, the 7 is the three possession threshold where teams will stop intentionally fouling and they will just like let the game go at that point. So you want to lay that number at under 6. 7 being a little bit more key, but I like how the spot sets up here for the Hawks as well. This is against, so why did I click on Portland? Not Toronto and Portland. I don't even want to talk about that shitty game. Although I've been playing a lot of shitty games recently. I won on the Bulls the other night in some crap fest. And then, which was against Brooklyn, actually, right? That was the game that I won. And then I won the day after that on some other really bad game on Toronto, I think. So I've been playing on these really, really ugly, bad games. But look what Brooklyn is coming off of, man. They're playing a third game in 4 days. They're playing a fourth game in 6 days. Is that right? Let me see. Did I do that? Or no, fourth game in... I can't even do math anymore. Is that a fourth game in 5 days? No, it's a fourth game in 6 days. Yeah, and then a fifth game in 8 days, and actually a sixth game in 10 days as well. Yeah, so, I mean, they've had a jammed schedule here, man. Kind of traveling, like zigzagging all over the place, too. So this spot doesn't look good, man. I mean, they had played Golden State really tough on the 6th. Then they went down and had to play at Charlotte, came back home, beat the Lakers in that bad spot for the Lakers. I was on Brooklyn in that game. Then they went to Cleveland. They played Cleveland really close, which is then why I faded Brooklyn after that. They played 2 really good games against 2 good teams on back-to-back nights, no less. 1 day off, and they went to Chicago. I think they just ran out of steam. I won the play on Chicago there. Then what did they do after that? Yesterday, they kind of took the Celtics almost to the limit, man. They only lost by 2 to the Celtics yesterday, even though, yeah, the Celtics had a big lead in this game. The Celtics did what they always do, and they were just like, whatever, this game's in the bag. The Celtics have to stop doing that, man. They get so complacent when they have a huge lead. Porzingis returned for the Celtics. The Celtics are resting guys in like every game at this point, resting starters, but they're going to have to get their starters all back, so that they have chemistry with each other again, man. Anyway, Brooklyn came all the way back and cut it to a 2-point game in the middle of the fourth quarter, and that kind of hung around for almost the remainder of the game until the Celtics did push the lead back to double digits. Then Brooklyn got all the way back again and got back to within 4 in the final minute of the game, and they were within 2 with 15 seconds left. And then I think had to intentionally foul, so they did not go away. They basically played right to the end there. So now Brooklyn's coming off of doing that, and now they're playing Atlanta, which is like, okay. And who does Brooklyn have up next? Oh, yeah, they have Boston again up next. If you're Brooklyn and you're completely done for the season, do you really think you're going to get up for this game against the Hawks after you just play the Celtics like that yesterday and you play the Celtics again next? I don't really think so. So I think Atlanta is absolutely the right play here, the right side. Atlanta is also in a good spot. They're coming off an embarrassing loss to the Clippers. That broke a win streak for them, sure, but they just lost horribly to the Clippers at home, no less, losing 121-98. Yeah, this Atlanta defense isn't good, but they're still a better team than Brooklyn. And I think they're going to be in an angry mood off of getting embarrassed like that, even though the Clippers aren't a bad team, but you lose to anybody like that on your home floor, you're going to be pissed. And now they're going up to Brooklyn, so they get to get out of home, which I think is also a good spot when you just leave home, forget about that, go on the road, start a road trip. Don't listen to what the local media is saying about how shitty you are for losing that game so badly. Just forget about it. Go on the road and beat Brooklyn. I mean, focus on Brooklyn. I mean, that's what I think the Hawks are going to do here. So I think we got a pretty negative spot for the Nets here and a positive spot for the Hawks for all those reasons. And on top of that, the Hawks, they're in the playoff hunt right now. I mean, even though they have a below 500 record, they're in the play-in games right now, I think. So they're kind of playing for like that seeding there where if they're going to be in the play-in, they probably want to host the play-in if they can. So they are playing for that, whereas Brooklyn has nothing left to play for on the season. So Atlanta still has something left to play for, even though I know they're laying points here, but they are the better team. They're in the better spot, and they have a reason to play. So I will lay Atlanta -6 there. And then Oklahoma City, Milwaukee is the ESPN night game, so we'll talk about that, and then I'll get out of here. Could be a good game, man. Oklahoma City is on a back-to-back. They beat me yesterday by basically 1 point because I had Detroit +5 there. I thought it was not the greatest spot for OKC coming off that game against Boston, which was kind of a misleading result, too, with all the free throws OKC got in that game. Then with Milwaukee up in the next day after Detroit, thought it was a bad spot. They still won and covered barely. Now they get Milwaukee on the back-to-back. Oklahoma City obviously is a road favorite again here because they're going to be lined like one of the best teams in basketball, which they are. Milwaukee coming up beating Indiana. They're also on a back-to-back, though, but with no travel. So Oklahoma City, a little bit of travel from Detroit to Milwaukee. Milwaukee, no travel at all, staying at home. Kind of looked like a little bit of a bad spot there between the Lakers and OKC, but I think Milwaukee didn't want to not show up against Indiana because it was a quick revenge spot where Indiana had just beaten them. So Milwaukee got the win over Indiana, and they're on a back-to-back as well. But I think the spot sets up a little bit better for Milwaukee. You know they're going to be focused with the Thunder coming into town, and Milwaukee not having to travel, both teams on the back-to-back. I think the spot does set up a little bit better for the Bucks. I'm not going to try to play it, but the money appears to disagree with me with the Thunder up from 4 to 5 with juice. 57% of tickets, 64% of the cash. So the money coming in on the Thunder. Again, I think I would look to probably go the other way and take the points here, but I'm not going to try to do it. Looking at the injury situation, really it's just Portis still being out for Milwaukee, but they've played without him for quite a while, so I don't think that really matters that much. The injury report is loaded for the Thunder right now, but I expect pretty much most of these guys, if not all of them, are probably going to still be in this game, so I don't think that matters as much. Anyway, that's going to do it for all the games today, man. I boil it down to just 3 plays here. I don't have any of the college basketball games. It is Selection Sunday, man, so it's going to be a fun time. We get all the build up to the bracket coming out. It's going to be fun. Maybe I'll come back tonight and give you just a quick video about my thoughts on the bracket, and then maybe I'll give my actual bracket breakdown. I don't know if it would be tomorrow night or maybe I would wait until the play-in games finish and then talk about it Wednesday night maybe is what I'll do, although Tower Gang is Wednesday night. We'll see how that goes. Maybe a very late Wednesday bracket special. We will see. We'll see how it goes. That's going to do it. My plays one more time are the Anaheim Ducks. You can either take the money line +150 or split the bet on the +1.5 puck line, half the bet and the other half on the money line. Phoenix Suns +3. I know you're going to love that one. Everybody's going to love that play. I mean, if you follow me and you follow what I do, man, you got to have balls. You got to have the balls to throw your money on some of these really ugly dogs. Like the worse that it looks, like the harder that it is to do it. Like, why am I doing this? Like this looks so bad, so wrong. The better it tends to be, man. Because you want to fade like that public sentiment more often than not. And then the Atlanta Hawks, maybe easier to stomach that one, -6. That's going to do it. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. Bonus content, of course, if you subscribe to the Patreon. You get live pre-show. You get the extra content at the end of the show. We go for another almost hour usually, the way that it's been the last few weeks. And you get to hang out with us in a Telegram, submit to the mailbag. That's going to do it. Tower Gang forever. Peace, everybody.